Welcome to the Genesis, the new beginning of a new way of looking at your life. And I'm gonna tell you why this is so important. You see, the reason why Thrivemed exists is because I have been in the trenches for years, year after year after year after year, meeting people, just like many of us, that unfortunately have gone through very hard times. And this is one of the stories that I'm gonna tell you. It was a lady just like this, in a hallway just like this, in a chair just like this. And she was looking up at me and she was crying. And I'll never forget the level of uncertainty that was in her face when she was talking to me about the uncertainty of losing her husband and what she was gonna do with the two kids. You see, unfortunately, her husband had a massive heart attack. Little did he know 3 days prior to this that his chest pain that started and he was trying to push through it was actually a major sign that there was an artery that was clogged in his heart called the widowmaker. But he tried to push through it just like many guys do. Push through it, I need to go to work, that sort of thing. But then when he showed up in the ER, it was too late. His heart stopped, his lungs stopped, he went into cardiopulmonary arrest, what we call a code. He was taken into the cath lab and the team tried to open up the artery, but it was too late, unfortunately. And just talking to her in the hallway, I will never forget that memory. And I don't want any of you to go through something like this. Because little did he know that his health was not the thing that was getting in the way. It could have been the thing that actually amplified his ability to fulfill his mission here on earth. And you see, decisions shape our destiny, but mastery sustains it. And so the decision that you're here could literally change and save your life. I know this because I've done this for so many years. And the reason why we call it Apollo is because you see, the story of Apollo is a story that we can use as an analogy to understand how we're gonna go through this program. You see, Apollo was not a single objective, one single dimension God. He was known as to be a multi-dimensional God. He was known to be a multi-dimensional God in body, performance, in foretelling the future, like entrepreneurs do when they dream things and then they go create them, in environments like creating temples and things like that, and then in spirituality. And just like you, Apollo was not given greatness. He had to own it. He had to earn it. No one gave it to him. Just like you, no one handed you success. You had to build it. But health is the same way, and we forget about that. And you see, some say that wealth is built through ownership, that you have to own land, or you have to own a business, or you have to own equity or shares. But it's through ownership that you actually become wealthy. Well, it's the same with health. Health is earned through ownership. Ownership of our data and ownership of our own health is the same, because you see, peak performance is not luck, it's engineered. And health, it's not a gamble. Health span is designed, and elite status requires elite preparation. One of the things that Apollo was known for was that he was the god of performance. And so that is one dimension that we're gonna go into. And then he was the god of foretelling the future. That is the other dimension that we're gonna get into, because entrepreneurs have to do that. They have to trust their own dreams. And then the temples Delphi were also made on Apollo's honor, which were temples where rulers and athletes and Olympians came to get answers, to be surrounded by the people that were going to help them get to the next level. And around those temples, there were actual gyms, because they believed that physical strength was directly related and it trickled into every other area of our lives. And also, he was known to be the god of harmony, mathematical harmony and music, which has a lot to do with synergy and being able to put teams together through friction, making sure that synergy comes out of there as a leader. And so we are what we do, what we think, what we are exposed to, and what we align ourselves with. And this is why it's so important. And the first thing that I realized this is when I was listening to Dr. Chirag Patel from Harvard University, when he was saying that health doesn't equal just genes, or health doesn't equal just what we are exposed to. That is both. That health equals genes plus what we're exposed to. But I could not stop thinking that there was something missing there. That it wasn't just the genes and the exposure, because some people had the same genes and the same exposure, but they were completely different. So there's a software there, right? A software, an interface in between the two that helps us transform traumas differently than other people. And so I believe that there is actually another dimension of health, which is the connectome. And the connectome is actually a new project, just like the Human Genome Project, to understand the genes and the proteins inside the body, and just like the Human Exposome Project from Dr. Chirag Patel from Harvard University, to understand what the effects of the total exposures of a human being. There is also a group of scientists working on what is called the Human Connectome Project to understand the totality of the neural networks and how they interact and how they are able to interface the different exposures and the genes and our bodies to understand how people behave, right? And then there is the other piece of the puzzle, which is the spiritual aspect. But you see, spirituality has many flavors and different ways. For instance, a Seventh-day Adventist, their sense of community is massive. And there's a lot of research that says that that sense of community and their diet and the way they go about their life is what leads to their longevity. And so these are called longevity and morality patterns. And so these morality patterns are embedded into pretty much every religion. And these morality patterns, which is philosophy, lead to strategy, lead to tactics, and lead to outcomes. And so health is really our biome, our exposome, our connectome, and what I call the spiritome. All of them together. So in this first week, we're going to dive into how are we going to get objective data from these 4 aspects of health. And we're going to start with the body. You see, in the body, there is only 3 types of data. We're going to get biomarkers, biometrics, and biomechanics. In terms of biomarkers, you see the body is made out of a bunch of components, starting with the genes, then with which genes get expressed. Just like a cookbook, you don't make every dish on a cookbook, right? Things get expressed from that cookbook. Maybe in page 34, that's the meal that you're going to be making that day. Well, the body's the same thing. That's called the transcriptome. And then the proteome is just all of the proteins, the nails, the hair, the muscles, the bones, all of those proteins. And then the metabolome is the proteins that actually help transform food into energy. Metabolism actually means transformation. And so that's what the metabolome is. And then the next week, we're going to dive into the connectome and what that means. What is the science of the connectome, which is an emerging field that is super exciting, which is mapping the brain. And then the exposome, which is an emerging field that is actually mapping the totality of the exposures that a human being has from birth to death and how that interacts with their health. And then in the last week of this first week of foundations of this first month that we're going to go through foundation so that you can go into the program is the spiritome. The spiritome is those morality patterns and how they relate to our lives, which are the tactics, and then the philosophy behind that. And we're going to try to understand each of us philosophy of life and philosophy of health and how that actually interacts with our health in a major way. And at the end of this, from all of this objective data, you're going to have the one pager, the one place where you're going to have all of the data in one click. So let's start with the biome and the biomarkers. Where are we going to start? The first piece of the puzzle is the genes. So we're going to check for 40 different types of cancer and their genetic markers within the bloodstream. Then we're going to test for that transcriptome. This is one of the best tests that we can test for the transcriptome to see whether your genes are expressing neurotransmitters at a healthy way or keeping them too much around. things that can cause inflammation, anxiety, depression, things like that. And then we're partnering with Function Health to get one of the most extensive blood panels out there so that you have access to that. And then we're going to test also within that Function Health to the metabolome, or how is your metabolism working. Next, we're gonna also start getting data about your biometrics. How do we do that? Through pictures, MRI, CT scans, and total body composition scans that show us your muscles, your bones, your fat. This is one of the single-handedly most important tests because it allows you to see the whole picture and the biggest numbers that we want to focus on. Also, from your heart perspective, we're going to check the calcium score. The calcium score is going to allow us to see whether there is calcification buildup in the heart. But then sometimes there is soft plaque, and this is where the coronary CT angiogram comes into place because it's going to show us whether there is already buildup that is not being able to see on the calcium score. And then lastly, we're going to check the biomechanics. How is our body functioning as an engine? As an engine that creates energy. Now, this is the VO2 max. The VO2 max is done in a way that is going to push you to the limits. Literally, you're going to go into what is called the pain cave. And the pain cave is where your heart rate is maximum and your lactic acid buildup is as high as possible and is painful. And not a lot of people can hold in that place for a long time. But as we age, we can hold that place less and less and less. And this is so important because as we age, you need a specific VO2 max, for example, to go on a hike with your grandkids. And if you don't have it, guess what? No hike with the grandkids. So you want to train so that the natural drop doesn't catch you at a really low place. And at the end of that, you're going to have this one pager with all of the data. You see, this is the illness and wellness continuum developed at Harvard University years ago. And it shows you how most people are actually neutral to the left. University of Chapel Hill showed that about 88% of the Americans are here, neutral to the left. What does that mean? They have no symptoms, but there is already abnormal biomarkers. 88% of the population. Very few are actually in good health, and very few are in optimal health. Most of the times we're in neutral or poor health because most people already have symptoms, right? And then when we get sick, multiple medications and our healthcare system just gets you back to poor health. But it doesn't help you build good or optimal health. It's just not designed to do that. It's just one half of healthcare, and it's really good at emergency response, but it's not really good at treating you like an athlete. And I believe there is elite health. Elite health, like I said, doesn't come for free. Elite health, you has to be decided upon. So it's a decision that you think of yourself as an athlete. You think of yourself as a business owner. You think of yourself as a leader, right? It's an identity that you build upon. So we have to build that identity of having elite health. Because 88% of Americans already have abnormal biomarkers. To be that 12%, we have to work together to get you there. These are the 4 steps. You've probably already met your health executive assistant. They're going to be a big part of your health transformation. They're going to push you. They're going to be there relentlessly when the times that you're tired, when the times that you don't want to do a test, when the times you've had it and you don't want to hear a word from Thrivemed. This is when we're going to be there pushing you across that finish line. Then we're going to gather that data from the biome, the connectome, the exposome, and the spiritome, and we're going to try to do it in that first month of onboarding. Then we're going to get together, go intensive in all of those numbers, and pick one domino number that will knock around a lot of the dominoes so that you can actualize your goals. So we're going to have those 4 dimensions, gather the data, assess it together, pick one of those, and then actualize it together, because we want you to be in the bold 12%. You've already proven that you take things to the next level, that you don't settle, that you lead, that you create the future, and we want you to be in that 12%. And through this one pager, you're going to be able to have everything in one page. And remember why you're doing this. Remember the story I told you about that lady sitting in the hallway, and literally it was a hallway just like this. And she looked just like this in that chair, and I'll never forget that moment, because when I looked into her eyes, there was complete despair. and her husband was only 55 years old, but his health was not being cared for. His engine, the engine that we have to run through this life, was not being cared for, and it died at a premature age. And she was left, and sometimes we leave havoc behind. And I don't want any of you to have to do that. And I don't want health to be one of the reasons to get in the way of your dreams. I want it to be the way to accelerate your dreams and to accelerate the mission that you have here on earth. So until next time, Dr. Z here. Reach out to us through your health executive assistant, or to me, or to any one of our teams. We're here for you and with you to get through to this process and to this shift in identity from you into an athlete. Dr. Z here. Until next time, take care.